Geetie, your turn now. Tell us a little bit about the Duke of Cambridge.
Hello. I started life in a community in the Midlands that was very politically based. It was my inspiration to everything, all the values that I've attached to my business. In some ways, I think it was kind of indoctrination, but, you know, I think that wasn't a bad thing, and we could do with a bit more of that going on in society. The commune was self-sufficient in all our own food. If we couldn't grow it ourselves organically, we bought it locally from local shops. We bought fair trade tea and coffee when you had to buy it from Oxfam, and it was really quite disgusting, but, you know, we wouldn't sell our soul to Nescafe. We set up a local food co-op that kind of worked with the local community, and we recycled everything wherever possible. It as I said, kind of it instilled all my values into me. And when I moved to London and started working in restaurants, I was shocked and so disillusioned with the lack of sustainability in restaurants. I just couldn't believe the lack of thought that was going into the food that was arriving here. Lamb shipped from New Zealand, chemicals poured down the drain, all to line the profit of my boss, who sometimes wouldn't even pay us a wage as a waitress. This was before the minimum wage, which hasn't been around for very long, I think we should remember. And I just knew it could be done differently. And with the inspiration of people like Anita Roddick and Ben and Jerry's, I really believed the market was out there, and that there were other people like me who wanted to first and foremost eat really good food in a really lovely atmosphere with fabulous artisan drinks, but without feeling that they were doing any damage to the environment or society. So I decided to open my own restaurant. I worked in restaurants around London saying that I wanted to gain experience. I needed to learn about wine lists. I needed to learn about gross profit margins, and found people brilliantly responsive to that, even though I was quite clear I wasn't going to stay for long and I'd be leaving to open in competition with them. I recruited a business partner. I felt very clearly at that stage that I needed somebody to do it with. We wrote a 60-page business plan, which we tailored to whoever we were showing it to. So if it was the bank, the ethics would virtually disappear off the plan altogether. And if it was a like-minded entrepreneur, then brilliant. You know, they'd all be pushed to the forefront again. Actually, raising the money wasn't difficult at all, apart from one problem we had with one bank who promised us 100,000, and 2 weeks before we were due to open pulled out because she hadn't got authorisation. My first lesson was always get everything in writing. Thanks to our fabulous landlord that we got in the end, we managed to get through that crisis quite simply. But actually, the thing that we found the hardest was finding a site, because ultimately, people who invest in business have got a lot of money, and they're gambling. They're gambling on you to see if they can make more money. And as long as you're brave enough and got a good business plan, you can convince them to do that. But to convince a landlord to take a risk on you, you know, all he wants is a secure tenant, was incredibly hard. We lost sites time and time and time again, but eventually found this wonderful man whose pub we'd seen a pub go on the market on Friday afternoon, discovered it. On Monday it was going to auction, so we spent the whole weekend desperately trying to find somebody to buy it and couldn't. Rewrote the business plan, went to the auction, followed the man out and said, "We've got a plan for your pub, you have to lease it to us." And a week later he called us and said that he would, which was fantastic. The first step obviously was to be certified organic. That was something I wanted to do. I wanted to be certified by the Soil Association, but I wanted to go further than the criteria that they were setting for values. I wanted it to be local food wherever possible. I wanted to be supporting local artisan producers, beer producers very much in London. I had a no air freight policy. I monitored how far the wine took to travel. It turned out that there's less pollution per bottle in a wine shipped from New Zealand than there is one driven from Italy. We bought fair trade wherever possible. We were recycling everything we possibly could, which has progressed over the years. So we're now composting our food waste, which is a real groundbreaker for me. We don't use in the first place, so we don't ever have packaged crisps. We make them all on the premises. We write our menus on blackboards. In every stage, we're thinking about the impact that the business is going to have environmentally. We used green electricity as soon as it was possible, and our fish policy was the first in the country created with the Marine Conservation Society to try and ensure that we were buying fish sustainably, which is incredibly hard and very vital and something that's often forgotten. And by supporting small businesses, that was an active policy that we would try not to use any big multinationals wherever possible. But actually, you find that like-minded suppliers, they tend to go hand in hand with quality anyway, so it's a quick kind of link up to provenance. Now, all of this is harder work. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But unlike Richard, I actually think a lot of my customers come to the pub because of the values that are attached to it. Now, undoubtedly, if I'm not doing my job very well, which is first and foremost to be a restaurateur, and I always employ my staff as restaurateurs and I teach them the values, which I think is having a good effect on society anyway, because they're learning a bit more and going and changing the way they behave in life. I think it's been fantastic marketing, and I could pinpoint endless articles that have been about the fact that we're an ethical business, that we're values driven, that we're doing something quite unique. But having said that, when we started 8 years ago, it was interesting what Matthew was saying about Tesco's and M&S and the announcements they've made this week. Sainsbury's and Marks and Spencer's were just beginning to sell organic food 8 years ago. They started a campaign, Sainsbury's started a campaign which said, yes, Mrs. Smith, we have your organic bananas. My friend's mum, who's called Mrs. Smith, used to call Sainsbury's every week and ask for organic bananas. I'm sure that was about her. But it was the very beginning. You know, the staff didn't know what fair trade tea and coffee was. It was a battle. And this was only 8 years ago. We've come so far. I think there's such excitement to be had in that thought. And if you think how far we could go now in 8 years' time, we really could change things. We really can have a direct impact on society. But having also said that, I think the government has to legislate. We can't rely on business to act responsibly. It hasn't acted responsibly. It's acted extremely irresponsibly. And we need more than just the good people of this country to spend their pound in the right way, although I think that is the most effective thing anyone can do, is to make the choice not to shop at that or spend your money with a company that isn't acting responsibly, and I think we're starting to do that. But I think, you know, take heart, society is changing. Thank you.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Fantastically passionate call to action. Thanks, Geetie.